In 1966, Mao Zedong declares a cultural revolution. He wants to establish a new form of communism, one that is more radical and far-reaching than ever before. At that time, there are only a few Europeans in China. What is it like to experience the movement from the inside? Far away in Europe, many young people are fascinated by this movement. Holding up placards with Mao's image, they take to the streets in protest against their own governments. It's often romanticized in Europe and remains a taboo in China to this day. What was it really like? The great cultural revolution of the proletariat. The residential buildings of Peking University for Foreign Languages. Paul Crook is from England and grew up here. Nowadays, he lives in London. His mother stayed here. Paul Crook visits her as often as he can. The 101-year-old is one of the few Western foreigners who followed Mao's communist movement passionately in the early days. In 1937, Paul's father, David, comes to China as a staunch communist. The young couple experience at first hand the upheaval of the socialist revolution in the rural areas.
Well, of course, it brings back memories of what was happening then, and I'm just glad that some of it has been captured. I think that's very valuable.
The Crooks moved to Peking at the end of the 1940s. The University for Foreign Languages needs native English-speaking professors at the time.
My parents were very keen supporters of the communist revolution in China. They were treated with great respect and participated in life in the university. Up until the Cultural Revolution, mostly, it was a very positive experience for them.
Paul Crook is also inspired by Mao in his youth.
I think I must have been really quite excited about the idea of seeing Mao, even in the distance at a sports event. He was this great idol that we had in our textbooks and that people talked about. Rather like, I think, teenagers or pre-teenagers worship their pop idols,
Mao Zedong has been revered since he established the People's Socialist Republic of China in 1949. In the eyes of the population, he created a new China. Following a century of shameful occupations, wars, and a brutal civil war, he epitomized the sense of a new beginning. For the first time since the days of the old empire, China is standing on its own 2 feet again. The charismatic Mao is the figurehead of communism, celebrated by the masses. The lives of Gudrun Alba and her mother, Basilia Fang, from Austria, are closely linked to Mao's China. In 1951, Gudrun's mother, Basilia, emigrated to China with her daughter, who was 3 years old at the time. Little Gudrun experiences Mao's propaganda from as early as her first grade at school.
I can remember in primary school textbooks, first you learned about the Communist Party and Mao Zedong as the first words you learned, before Papa, Mama, numbers and letters.
As a single parent, in the early 1950s, Gudrun's mother Basilia falls in love with Fang Bing, a Chinese postgraduate engineering student. After their wedding, he wants to help China to become more industrialized, using his metallurgy expertise. He convinces his wife from Tyrol to accompany him to China, an exotic country back then.
Well, we already knew about Africa, but China, totally unknown. It was too far away, but for some reason that didn't bother me at all.
Gudrun Alba grows up with two half-brothers in Shenyang in northern China. Before long, she only speaks Chinese.
Gudrun always felt Chinese. She got upset when anyone said she was foreign. The worst thing for her was having blonde hair. If only she had black hair, then she wouldn't stand out so much.
I felt like I was the devil with everyone looking at me, touching my hair. Some children were curious. They had thick hair, I had thin hair. I had blue eyes. They all had black eyes. When I went out into a new part of town, the whole street filled up. The police had to come and stop the children so that I could get away quickly.
Despite the Mao cult and communism itself, Basilia tries to raise her daughter to be a Catholic like herself. She has brought a consecrated image with her to China as a memory of her home in Tyrol.
But the image, that there, is the archangel, the little one. You see, the one with the wings right there in the picture. Early in the morning when we woke up, we often looked at the picture and talked about it. Yes, that's the angel. He protects the children so that they stay safe.
Back then, the mother and daughter could never have imagined that this guardian angel could ever bring the family into danger. In China, Mao's ideology is penetrating deeper and deeper into the everyday lives of the people. The party leader thinks that industrial development is happening too slowly. He orders a great leap forward. China should soon be producing more steel than Great Britain, with the sheer willpower of the people alone. Even the farmers need to build small furnaces, but while they are toiling away for Mao's vision, their fields become barren. Instead of the envisioned economic boom, there is famine. Around the beginning of the 1960s, between 15 and 30 million people in China, mostly living in the rural areas, die of hunger. The other party leaders rebel against Mao's lunacy and try to limit his power. The pragmatic new head of state, Liu Shaoqi, intends to guide China out of the crisis. In 1963, Irene Eckleben accompanies her husband Walter to China, a country shaken by crisis, as he travels to Peking as a correspondent for ADN, the GDR news agency. The couple are among the very few foreigners still allowed to enter the country.
My husband could speak Chinese, so of course he was sent to China as a correspondent. And since I was his wife, I was sent along too. And people asked me to try and take some pictures. And so I wandered through the streets, endlessly taking photos.
Irene Eckleben's unique photos document not only everyday life, but also the political power struggles in the communist country.
Thousands of infuriated young people block the road. At a crossing, the ADN vehicle is stopped by Mao troops, surrounded and covered in leaflets of slogans.
In the mid-1960s, the country is close to breaking point. Behind the scenes, Mao is forging plans for his return to power. In 1966, he strikes.
Yes, I can remember on May the 16th we had to go to school in the evening and listen to the news. There was the first newspaper from Peking, and the political party leader said that the Cultural Revolution was starting.
At the beginning, there is a handwritten placard, a so-called wall newspaper. It criticizes the party leadership of Peking University for being revisionist. Mao launches an attack on his internal political opponents, saying there are bureaucrats everywhere who want capitalism back. the people ought to display placards and expose these class enemies and their bourgeois thinking.
Then some classmates started putting up posters in classrooms and in the hallways in the primary school, criticizing various aspects of the teaching.
Irene Eckleben takes photographs of the placards. Writing a wall newspaper now means showing loyalty to the old leader Mao, who is still celebrated amongst the people. The insults, mostly against Liu Shaoqi, the head of state, are growing wilder and wilder.
They were put up everywhere, it didn't matter where. Whether at the watchmakers, at the big department store, or at the beautiful Peking super hotel. They were put up everywhere, and if you were unlucky, they put them on your back.
Irene Eckleben also takes photographs of how the Red Guards are now forming newly mobilized youth groups. As part of the Cultural Revolution, adolescents are no longer supposed to merely sit dutifully in the classroom, but rather to march for the chairman as part of the Mao youth. Under his authority, they are supposed to rescue socialism in China from its bourgeois enemies within the party, an honorable task.
And many people from our class had to wear these red armbands. And then they made lists of those who belonged to a good family, farmers, workers, soldiers, and those got the armbands straight away.
But Gudrun's Chinese stepfather is an intellectual, so she's not included.
Then I went home and spoke with my mother and asked her what my grandma in Tyrol did for a living. She said she was a farmer. The next day I went to the office of the immigration police and said, I want to have it formally confirmed that my grandma is a farmer, which they did immediately. Yes, okay. You come from a farming family.
And that's how Gudrun Alba becomes the only Austrian Red Guard, a young soldier for Mao.